also I've done work with the Centres for Independent Living, and currently the chairman of Greater Dublin Independent Living, amongst many other things. But since I got this job about 6 months, I had to pull back from a lot of that stuff. So really, I'll start with kind of history of my life, and that will show how people can progress over their own life, change their services, and move their budgets around. I'll just introduce, this is Miroslav Milikovic. He's my personal assistant at the moment, and I have a number of personal assistants that work with me throughout the day. I change them almost every single day, from Miroslav today to someone else tomorrow, in order to help me with my work life and personal care. But up until 1993, I did not have a disability. I was going to mainstream skills and playing football, captain of the football team, the table tennis team, and doing lots of other stuff, having a normal, average life, studying engineering in Letterkenny University as well. Just one evening going to football training, I fell off a motorbike and got a spinal injury, and I spent the next year in hospital under rehabilitation. The issue was, when I was told I could leave that hospital, was finding a place to live and finding somewhere suitable for my needs in order to live a decent life for the rest of my life. In 1993, to find somewhere for me to live, they thought an adequate kind of standard place for me to live would be to go home, which I didn't want, or to live in an institution. That was the only choice I had. So after some negotiation with the social worker, they looked at putting me into like just an old folks home, like living on a ward with normally just your standard old folks. But I eventually found a place in a Cheshire home, which was okay. I had my own room, but I was told when to eat, told when to get up. Every aspect of my daily life was organised and planned. I was told when to go out. But within that institution, I managed to go back to college as well and study sociology and politics at Trinity College. So there was some aspects of it which were quite good, but I just realised that at one stage I wasn't going to stay there for the rest of my life. So I applied for social housing, and I looked at houses in the community and PA packages, which was happening around 1993, a kind of independent living program. And I wanted to see if that could work for me, if I could live in the community. At that stage, in 2000 actually, people were saying it won't work for you, and like you'll be back in the institution within 12 months. Like, how are you going to manage? How are you going to get the services you need in the community? You're not going to find a house which is suitable. You're not going to get a PA package which is suitable for you. So they said, oh, you'll be back in no time. Even my family were kind of saying, well, you're better off staying here in the Cheshire home, like, because all your needs are provided for. But anyway, I kind of went ahead with it anyway. I don't really listen to people that well. So I said I'd try it anyway, and I kind of built up some safeguards saying to the people in charge of Cheshire, give me a chance to try this, and if it fails, I made a mistake, and I'll come back. So I applied for housing. At the time I had 35 hours in order to attend university, so I was doing that at the same time as looking for social housing and a PS extra hours. So I eventually, by looking around my local community myself, I was told it was an overall medical priority for housing, and I could have a house, but they couldn't find me a place to live in. And I said, do you mind if I go and try and find a place for myself? And they said, go and try, but you won't find anywhere. So I seen a housing association building a development close to me, and I rang them up. I asked them is there a suitable unit in there? And they said, well, we don't know, maybe. And I rang my housing officer, he says, I don't know anything about that housing association. So I rang the housing association back and I said, I'll work with your architect to build me a suitable house. And they said, okay, come along, have a chat. So eventually we sat down and we just adapted one of the units for myself. I pushed the living room a bit that way and the house a bit that way to make it big enough for a decent sized house, a 2-bedroom bungalow for myself. Then I needed to get a PA service in place. We had to establish how much it cost to keep me living in a residential institution. I went to the house 3 days a week. I stayed there 3 days a week, mostly lying on the floor, and then coming back to the residential institution. My argument was, I'm using the services of a residential institution, and I'm using the services. I have a house which I can't live in without more hours. So eventually we all sat down, as you do, and they kind of established a budget of how many hours I would need to live full-time in my own home. So then I moved my services from Cheshire, Ireland, into a number of hours with IWA, and that amount of hours came to 120 hours per week to live independently in my own home. So that was it. I moved into my own home in 2001 with the service received from IWA. And I employed my own, with that service provider, I employed my own PAs. They had control over the payroll, other things like health and safety in my house, and they monitored my own staff and stuff like that, and supplied me some staff sometimes as well. But basically I managed them. In 2011, I was approached by Owen and the Chocolate, which is a pilot project about direct payments and managing your own budget and putting your budget actually into cash format, putting your hours into cash format, and then buying services back from companies like private organisations or employing people directly yourself. I had been involved in the independent living movement for years, and we talked about it for, I'd say, 3 years prior to that. I was just sick of listening to people talking about it and doing nothing about it, so I decided to get involved and see, let's push it forward with the pilot project. And it was one of 4 people in Ireland who actually decided to manage their own budget through a direct payment. But it meant setting up your own limited company, having your own policies, procedures, everything, but you would have your own bank account, and the HSE through a broker system would pay money into your bank account, and then you would buy back your PA services from, you could buy them from a private company, you could buy them for an organisation like Cheshire or IWA, but you could buy your services anywhere you wanted, because the money would be in your bank account, and you could employ people privately as well. So that's how I got involved as a direct payment. I currently do that now. I have my own bank account. I'm surrounded by people who give me a little hand with payroll as well, volunteers. It wouldn't have started without independent living. I wouldn't have. I think I would be still lying in that bed in the institution only for the independent living movement. It was in 1993. It was seemed acceptable that I would spend the rest of my life in an institution. My family basically had thought that was fine for me, for a guy with a disability, 23 years old. That was the norm back then. There's no need for me to move out, there's no need for change, and it's just quite acceptable for me to be in an institution with 30 other people, and to be told what to eat, when to eat, and don't go out into the community and put yourself at risk. Who knows basically, in the institutional life, I've seen abuses happen inside there, which are only coming to people's attentions now. And those abuses actually happen quite naturally in an institution. We have power vacuums between the service users and people providing the service to you. It's a large gap between controlling people's lives and then people receiving services. Naturally, I think the abuses happen naturally, and just moving people around is not the answer to the abuses that we have seen in recent months in the media and stuff like that. But then I would stick with that. Independent living was just getting housing, transports, access to buildings, and our big thing I would call campaign independent was changing people's minds and perspectives of what disabled people can do in society. So people's attitudes. I mean, fortunately, there were some great people with some great attitudes who wanted me out, who thought it was the best idea ever and supported me. So that was great. So we'll take the next slide. The next slide, independent living, and what does it mean? And everyone else. It means that people with disabilities have the same control and choices in everyday life that most people take for granted, and that's what we see on the board here. Most of these things are not incredible. They're people's life choices. What's their freedom? People choose what they want to eat usually. They choose where they want to go. They choose to have a job. They have aspirations for their children to grow up, go to their local school, not get expelled from it, and not have to fight to get back into it again. Those things are just normal for most people. Like that's how most people live their lives, and that's how people with disabilities want to live their life in society, go to their local schools, get a job, go on, have a relationship, have a life, and live in their own house, have their own transport, and all those things. Just normal everyday life. Okay? And as I said, direct payments came to me. It's relatively new to you all. It's maybe be in Australia at the moment and places like that. It came here because we kind of had ad hoc systems. We have no policies or procedures around it. The more we organise it and the more we develop, then policies and procedures come into place. It's always the people with the disabilities set the agenda, and then you guys catch up later on with your procedures and policies around it. So it wouldn't have happened without Owen and Nishaki. The system really don't want to put people with disabilities in charge of their own budgets. They don't really trust us with our own money yet. So until that happens, they put us in a position where I needed a limited company around myself in order to run my own budget. That's a limited company is not easy to set up. You have to go along, you have to put a board around yourself, you have to have policies and procedures. It's just as difficult to setting up a Cheshire Ireland or an IWA or any Google. It's a limited company for you. It's a massive bureaucracy. It's difficult to do, but it's possible to do. So I set one up around myself in order to run my direct payment, and I do it from the circle of support. It's good if you have people support you in doing that. People who have knowledge of business and are a great help if you're going to do this project. So, okay. I set up my company. It's called Cullen's Personal Assistance Services Limited. So I think I wanted to call it Personal Assistance Service, but I think it was gone at the time when I went to the CRO office, so it just got longer now. But I run my own company, which I have a bank account, and I choose to pay people pay rate. The standard pay rate can range from, I think it's for a personal assistant hour, it can range from about 21 €21 per hour up until €27. That sounds a lot, but when you take PSI, holiday entitlements for PAs, sick leave entitlements and all that, you end up with a pay rate in the region of about €12 per hour. So it breaks down something like that. And then I'm responsible for the PSI, all that holiday leave, paying an auditor once a year or two as well, and other bits and pieces like it's actually interesting. For the first time in my life, I actually know how the money follows the individual, where every penny goes regards my lifestyle. So it's made my relationship with the people who provide the money much more realistic. I don't take it for granted anymore that I just get hours or get services from a service provider. So eventually, we've got to the limited company stage. I hope to develop that into 2015-16 into a position where we actually could buy services from an occupational therapist, from an OT, and that budget would belong to us. That would put us in the ultimate service client situation with the service providers, where we would no longer kind of be passively kind of standing by waiting for services. Actually, they would come to us and we would buy our services back from them. I would say I need a wheelchair. They would bring me a choice of wheelchairs, and I would use my budget to buy a wheelchair off them. That would empower me a lot more than it empowers me at the moment. At the moment, I have to just wait, and I have to wait for an assessment, and then I have to listen to their professional opinion on what would be best for myself. So I see a service advancing to a stage where we actually choose what we want from occupational therapists, from physiotherapists, and the type of physio we need, type of skills we want. So, and that money does empower people. So, and that's what direct payments are about. So a few wise words from a quotation that I got from someone. I think it's Adolf Ratzka, a gentleman from Sweden, who had been developing direct payments for years and rights for people with disabilities. And he said, we are profoundly ordinary people sharing the same need to feel included, recognised and loved. That's exactly what's here. We're ordinary people, the same as everyone else, with the same desires as every other non-disabled person in society. As long as we regard our disabilities as tragedies, we will be pitied. Anyone with a disability or a kid with a disability, it's just one aspect of their lives. There's no need to pity that disability. They don't wish to be pitied. They have maybe one issue that society doesn't understand. And we as a group we can find solutions for them. We can sit down with other people and find solutions to their issues. And some people here in the room have found great solutions for their family members. As long as we feel ashamed of who we are, our lives will be regarded as useless. That's what happened in the past. That's why we built institutions for useless people who were locked up for all their lives, and from birth to death. And so many people had so much more potential in their lives if they were allowed to be part of the community and not been locked in institutions like these ones in the places where I lived. And then lastly, and not but least, as long as we remain silent, we will always be told what to do. And that's true. If you don't speak up for yourselves, nobody came to me and said, oh, you need a house. No one came to me and said, oh, you need a PA service. Actually, people told me that you don't need these things in your life. Nobody told me I need a job. People told me to sit at home, don't bother. So nobody's going to come and really tell you that you need these things. So have to go out, actually still fight for these things that you need for your family members and tell them what you need. Like the sandwich approach, tell them they're great, then get inside, tell them what you need, and then tell them you're great when you're leaving again. But you just need to fight for your family members in some situations, like get your foot in the door, build a situation for yourself, change the system, because the system doesn't change itself. Okay, thank you.
Just in case you're wondering, we will have time for questions and discussions towards the end of the day. We're going to spend quite a bit of time, hopefully, with the speakers and with yourselves discussing the issues that you hear about today. I want to echo very much the last element of that. If we don't speak up, nobody will actually, everybody will keep telling us what to do. And it's events like today, it's events like Galway, it's events like we're going to have in Dublin that start that process of speaking up, that actually start the voices being heard. You have to start small, but starting small leads to something bigger. And as long as we keep that momentum going, and events like this, learning like this, helping each other like this, then I think we will start to see change happen. But it will take time to do that. Our next speaker is a mother, a very strong lady. I met her for the first time last night, an inspirational lady. I know that word's a bit bandied about a lot today, but actually she is indeed. She's a mum of 5 young people, and they are still young, the oldest being 28, and I was surprised with that as well, to be honest. And she's going to tell you a story about how over the last 10 years she has worked really hard to get to what she believes is now going to be and is a good life for her family and for the individual that she's supporting. So I'd like to welcome up Catherine Finn.